morning. Good morning. It is wonderful to see all of you here this morning. My name is Glenn Castle, and I'm the CEO at Embrace Families. I'm excited for all of you to join us. I'm excited about our conversation this morning as Embrace Families formally kicks off this year's National Child Abuse Prevention activities. And as all of you know, for us, for what is now the last 7 years, I think, which is amazing, 6 years, is the manicure movement. So as many of you know here, as there's so many close friends to our organization here with us today, the purpose of Manicure Movement at Embrace Families is really to elevate the conversation about child abuse and bring to our community the reality that some of our children are not safe at night when they put their head onto a pillow. Part of the challenge for us in our community is that we've not really been willing to talk about that. And so we wanted to take advantage of the attention that National Child Abuse Prevention Month brings to raise that conversation and try to increase the willingness to engage in a dialogue about the realities that our children face, but just as importantly, the realities that their families face. And for so many of them, the reason they may draw close or even enter the foster care system might not relate to the things that the surface thinks are obvious. So everybody has seen the horrible headlines and the tragic events that might lead a child into foster care where a parent has done unthinkable harm to them. Those cases are real, and those incidents happen. But for many, many, many other children and families in our community, it is a crisis, not the lack of love. It is a struggle and not a lack of caring that may draw them into foster care. And so this morning we'll have a good bit of conversation about that and try to think about what obligation we have as a community to help families that are struggling so that they may not end up in the tragic and difficult events that are the realities of foster care. So we thank you for being here with us. I have a couple of housekeeping things that I have to do, which I will. First of all, I definitely want to thank our partners, starting with Florida Blue. Florida Blue has supported Manicure since its beginning. We appreciate them so much. Nemours Children's Health, which is our presenting sponsor this morning. We'll talk about them a little more in just a minute. And Simply Healthcare, our newest Manicure Movement partner. Thank you so very much. I also want to acknowledge some of the wonderful VIPs that are such friends to the agency and with us this morning. From Orange County, we have Mayor Jerry Demings. You're going to hear more from the mayor in just a bit. Also, Sheriff John Mina and School Board Member Pam Gould. Our city support, representing the City of Orlando, Commissioner Bakari Burns. And City of Kissimmee, Commissioner Jeanette Martinez. Thank you all so very much for being here. A key element that I think has really changed in foster care over the time that I've been involved is a real weaving with the local community. I hope later this morning, not just here in Orlando and in Central Florida, but also in some of our surrounding communities, you'll get a sense of how important that braiding is. These systems don't work in isolation. They work in conjunction with one another. And too often we think of them in discrete silos rather than the reality of a blurred line between mental health service and homelessness and domestic violence and foster care and others. And so one of the ways we can really elevate our impact on kids and on their families is to really braid those systems together. That support here for Embrace Families in our community has been invaluable for a long time. All right, next up, I would like to introduce our presenting sponsor and also, by the way, board chair at Embrace Families, representing Nemours, Angela Folger.
Good morning, everybody. Again, I hate following Glenn because he does such an eloquent job. But thank you all for joining us today. It's a great honor to be here to welcome you to the Embrace Families kickoff of Child Abuse Prevention Month with a critical conversation about prevention. As Glenn said, my name is Angela Folger. I am the Director of Pharmacy at Nemours Children's Health in Lake Nona and have served as a proud member of the Embrace Families Board of Directors for 5 years. And as he mentioned, I am the current board chair, and I greatly appreciate you all being here today. I have spent my career dedicated to helping children in a multitude of ways, both in and outside of the healthcare space. One of the greatest things I'm privileged to do is serve as a mentor to a wonderful teenage girl who I met when she was being fostered through Embrace Families. And I can now happily say has been adopted, so very exciting for her. We really consider each other family. She shaped my life as much as I hope I have shaped hers. It is experiences such as this that have brought me to my board role with Embrace Families. Embrace Families really understands that a child's life is a journey of ups and downs, and it's all of our responsibility to help the most vulnerable children in our community. Embrace Families is one of 18 lead agencies in the state of Florida that work to help Florida families overcome the root causes of abuse and neglect. Through case management and other prevention services, these community-based child welfare organizations are committed to the safety and well-being of our community's children. Here in Central Florida, we are proud to partner with our colleagues around the state to bring awareness to child abuse prevention efforts through the Manicure movement. Embrace Families and Nemours Children's Health share a dedication to improving outcomes for children, teens, and young adults. This commitment extends well beyond the scope of traditional child welfare services and traditional health care. Nemours' partnership with Embrace Families is one example of our journey to create the healthiest generations of children. Our Well Beyond Medicine initiative powerfully illustrates what we stand for as an organization, which is to go beyond medicine with population health, prevention, research, education, advocacy programs, and partnerships that support Florida children and their families. So again, thank you for being here today to help the children in our community who need us the most.
Thank you, Angela. You know, the volunteer board members in a nonprofit organization like us don't get the spotlight very often. But you see in Angela's comments the deep felt and impactful commitment that they have, not only to helping manage the kind of things that come with being on the board of a not-for-profit, but the reality of relationships and impact on children, which is far more important. Thank you, Angela. So next, I really have the distinct privilege to introduce our next speaker. This perspective is one that is frequently overlooked in the dialogue about foster care and the realities of what might bring a child into the foster care system. Today, you're going to meet Stephanie Bowman. She's the visionary founder and CEO of One Heart for Women and Children, based right here in Orlando. The organization provides hunger relief, education, and community resources for the homelessness and underserved in and around Orlando. This successful business leader has been featured on People Magazine, Time Magazine, The Kelly Clarkson Show, and she's been honored by Godiva Chocolates with their prestigious Godiva Lady Award, which celebrates women doing great things. I'm actually a little jealous that I can't win that. These accomplishments are impressive, but the story that Stephanie will share with you is not about where she is. It's more about what brought her there. Her current success was only achieved by overcoming deep adversities, including briefly losing her children into the foster care system here in Florida. The journey back from that low point and what turned her life around has become a message of hope for people who find themselves in equally difficult situations. We are so grateful to Stephanie for her willingness to share her story and help to challenge our preconceived notions about parents and about parent support. As a community, this is how we can help turn lives around. Stephanie?
Hello, everyone. I'm super honored, and it's a privilege for me to be here today with you all. I'm going to ask you guys to do me a favor. If you guys will put your phones down in your laps, if you're holding on to anything else, just put them down for just a moment. And I'm going to ask everybody to close your eyes for a moment. I'm going to ask 3 different questions while you do this. And that first one is, when you think about your favorite childhood memory, what do you think of? We all think of something very, very different. Thinking about the years, maybe it was with a grandmother, maybe it was with a parent or a teacher or a sibling. Every single one of us is going to have a different memory. The second one is, when you think about legacy, what does that word mean to you? It means something very, very different for each and every one of us. That legacy could be something that's been passed down tangible. It could be a business, or it could be financial. It could also be the way that somebody has left this world, helping to make other people feel very differently in a positive way. That last question is, when you think about driving down the road and you see somebody, maybe on the side of the road with children, with a sign that says, "Will work," or "I'm hungry," or "Can you help?" Or you're driving around the corner and maybe you see a mother putting her children in a dumpster for food, and you don't know the story, but you start to think, like fill in that blank what you think, because we all think very differently about that as well. And I want to say, open up your eyes if you would. You know, that favorite childhood memory for me was 8 years old, and I never in my wildest dreams thought at 8 years old, as I was having my favorite birthday party with my family, with one of the last celebrations with one of my grandmothers, who also, she left that beautiful legacy of treating others the way we want to be treated, with love and kindness, embracing others, no matter what, and just keep on loving. Those were her last words to me when I was 8 years old. Just keep loving, no matter what. And then I was putting my children in dumpsters for food. 24 years ago, I found myself running from the domestic violence. My children were, she was 6 months old and was my youngest. Katie's here with us today, and I want to say, Katie, thank you for loving me through every single piece of this. I am so grateful. I'm grateful for the experience of being homeless for 5 weeks, although I'll tell you that nobody in the United States deserves to be where I was. I was still drug addicted, running from the domestic violence, afraid that he was going to find us. Didn't know where to find food, didn't know where to find the resources that were needed, and DCF found us. There was one beautiful person. There were many beautiful people, but there was one that really believed in me, and she said, "You don't have to go any farther." And I did go farther. She was out looking for me with police officers and many other people, and they found us after 5 weeks. They found us. My oldest was 6 years old. Katie, my youngest, was 6 months old. And when she found us, there was a taxi cab that was underneath the Paramore Anderson overpass, and that's where we ended up. The first cab that drove by grabbed my children and took them to a safe home. I had no idea what happened to my children. The second vehicle that pulled up was DCF. And it was so amazing because as they picked me up and they literally put me in this SUV, they said, "You have a choice. You have a choice to go to foster care. I mean, you have a choice. Your kids are going to foster care. You have a choice to go to detox, which meant treatment, or we can take you to jail, which would have been prison." And I will tell you, if I would have taken jail, I would still be in prison and probably getting out in about 2 years. I got clean and sober, and all of this happened back in 1999, and I am now 24 years clean and sober. And it's a result of so many people pouring their love into me no matter what. It is a broken system, but I'll tell you that it's not so broken that it can't be fixed. But it takes a lot. It takes a lot of people. It takes a lot of nonprofit organizations. It takes a lot of people just stepping up and having a seat at the table to say, how can we work together hand in hand with no egos, with the same agenda? And that same agenda, being able to help the mother, the father, whoever that is that had their children removed from them, to be able to get them back. Not just as line items, though. I remember when I was in treatment, LaShawn Henderson was my DCF worker back in 1999, and I'd love to know where she is today. You know where she is. I love it. This is the beautiful part, because without LaShawn Henderson and Debbie Settles, I wouldn't be where I am today. I would not be the woman that I am today with a nonprofit organization helping thousands of other women to get their life back on track. During that, I started One Heart for Women and Children when I was 8 years clean and sober. And when I started One Heart, somebody had said to me, you have volunteered over 10,000 volunteer hours, and it's time for you to start a nonprofit organization and start connecting with other people in the community that are all doing the same thing. And I didn't know what that was going to look like. But what I did know is that I had a story, and that I had a mission, and that I had a purpose. And that purpose was, even if I was just to help one woman, one mother, not have to go as far down as I did. And if she did, to be able to be there to say, I'm here to love you, but I can't do it for you. We're not here to do it for them. We're here to live life with them. And what does that look like? For me, during that case plan, there were 17 different, I'm going to call them line items, because that's what it was at the time, those line items. And what happened in the meantime is each person that came into my life, they said, this isn't just a line item. With every single tool that's being passed over to you, it's your opportunity to either take that tool and live it and use it, or not. And each time there was somebody else, another life coach, another person coming in with counseling or parenting classes, like I was so eager to have a different life, so eager to get my children back, that I was willing to do whatever it took. And I will share that the day that I graduated from treatment, 8.5 months being in treatment, the judge and LaShawn Henderson were at the treatment center at Steps in Apopka to give me my children back, and I got full custody of my kids back. And as a result of it, they're helping to break the cycle. I've got a 3-year-old granddaughter, and my oldest daughter, who's 29 years old. Remember, she was 6 years old when we were running from the domestic violence, and she remembers a whole lot. And during that time, she calls me often, and she's like, Mom, did this really happen? Like, I had a dream last night. Or, hey, Mom, I'm really sorry for the time that I fill in the blank. She's a mom now, so these things are starting to be remembered. And I just think it's really beautiful that, my time is up. I think that it's really beautiful that we together can come together and help make a difference in the community for each mom, each dad, each person that needs our help, and equally for the children to love them wholeheartedly, because not every child has to end up where my children did. So thank you all.
Fundamental in our messaging around Manicure is the reality that 1 in 5 children will be abused before they're 18 years old. Every day in America, 5 children die at the hands of the person charged to take care of them, but one person can make a difference. How perfectly telling is the reality embedded into Stephanie's story about the impact anyone can have on somebody else at any given time. I've done the work around foster care here in Central Florida for now more than 30 years, and that time has included 1999, the time frame when Stephanie's story emerged. Some of you may have heard the reality for me when I realized that this wasn't just a job, it was going to be a career. And that happened in 1999. A young mother came into the service center where I was, let go of the hand of her child, and turned around and walked away. The child was about 2 years old. One of the wonderful social workers, as we do, scooped him up, put him in my arms. And that little boy cried like he knew what was happening. And forever, my life was changed as well. As long as there was a little boy like that, I have to look in the mirror and ask, what am I doing to make things better for him? And so to see the next iteration of those circles, to see the successes that are real, to see the impacts on families, to see the realities for children, not as a case, not as a family record, not as a person you blow by on the side of the highway, but as another person, another American, another Floridian, another Central Florida life in our hands. And so what are we prepared to do? What is it that we will do to try to impact those lives today and tomorrow? And so now I'd like to further that discussion, inviting some panelists up to the stage to talk about how we can have an impact as a community, the things that are happening around Central Florida, including a greater circle around Central Florida with some of our friends to the north. And so I'd like to invite our panelists, starting with the Honorable Jerry Demings, Mayor of Orange County. Certainly, Mayor Demings needs no introduction, certainly not here in Central Florida. He has served as the mayor in Orange County since December of 2018, but his service to our community has extended much longer than that. He said to me recently that he can sort of figure out at what point in his life he met somebody by the way that they greet them. Is it officer? Is it chief? Is it sheriff? Is it mayor? Is it coach? Is it professor? And for a few, even grandpa. As an Orlando native, Mayor Demings is a graduate of Jones High School, Florida State University, and Orlando College. He served our community as an educator, a police officer. He was the first African-American chief of Orlando Police Department, first African-American Orange County sheriff, and the first African-American Orange County mayor. In all these years of service, he has never wavered from his commitment to make our community better and make the lives of all of us a little bit richer. His commitment has shown again and again, and it shows once again today with his willingness to join us. He is a remarkable person and a great friend. Thank you, Mayor. Up next, we have Pebbles Edelman from the Partnership for Strong Families. Pebbles is the Chief of Clinical and Community Services for the Partnership for Strong Families, the lead foster care agency and our counterpart and friend in the Gainesville area. Little known fun fact, it actually goes from Gainesville all the way north to the Georgia line. If you'd like to know how far that is, I encourage you to jump on 75 and find out. Pebbles has served in this role since 2009, and her oversight includes all clinical and family preservation programs within the partnership's responsibilities. It includes ensuring that children and families receive the quality services and the desired outcomes that we all seek, including the collaborative relationships with service providers, partners, and quality prevention programs. Specifically under Pebbles' leadership, the partnership has established a network of family resource centers, and we're going to learn more about that from her this morning. She's also a licensed mental health counselor. We're so grateful to have her travel down with us today. Welcome, Pebbles. And then last, but certainly not least, we invite Stephanie Bowman to come back up to the panel. You've already met Stephanie, but I will not reintroduce her. But let me say again how grateful we are for her bravery in sharing her personal story, and also how flexible she is for joining us up at the panel this morning. Some of you may notice the program switch. We had, unfortunately, a very last-minute cancellation from Secretary of DCF, Siobhan Harris. And so, Stephanie, you have big shoes to fill as you fill in for the Secretary. Thank you so much for doing that. So as we invite some dialogue amongst our panelists, Stephanie, this first question is for you. So hearing a little bit about your story and realizing the way in which you received support, from your experience, what do you think that community support looks like for parents if it's going to have the most impact?
Thank you for the question. For the parents, I think that having the wraparound services is utterly important. Again, not just having line items to check off, but having people in the community, organizations in the community that rally together to say, here's my part of the commitment, here's your part of the commitment, and equally being able to have that parent take ownership as well. And for them to know exactly what their part is. And so as we're all holding each other accountable, utterly important.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. It's really wonderful that you mentioned that wraparound support, something that helps kind of tie all of this together for families who so easily can just see it as more stress and more problems. Even help can easily take the form of not help, delivered at the wrong time or the wrong duration. Mayor Demings, let me turn now to you. Orange County has been such a leader in trying to rethink the way that we support our community and really dig into the fact that it is the reality that over 80% of the families that come into the foster care system will come there for neglect, not for physical or sexual abuse. Orange County has done such a good job in trying to think about community programs differently and touch on that kind of wraparound approach that Stephanie mentioned. Can you tell us a little bit about your view of where that goes in Orange County and why it's been a priority for you?
All right, thank you very much. Let me just say to all of you, we're honored to be here today and to partner with Embrace Families and to the other community-based organizations who are working in this space. I do see our school board member here, and we have a wonderful partnership with Orange County Public Schools here as well. I want to acknowledge some of my staff. My Deputy Chief of Staff, Carol Burkett, is here with me, and also Orange TV. We're fortunate here in Orange County to have our own television station, and so whenever I travel and I meet important people, we take our team with us, and so in preparation for the State of the County address, I document the journey each year, and in June of this year, I'll give the State of the County. And so you may see some of yourselves featured in that at some point. But we also have Dr. Tracy Salem, who is here, who works in our Community and Family Services area. Many of you know her as well. So I acknowledge staff because most days, they make me look really good. But let me just talk now about our partnership with Embrace Families. One of the things that we have helped to support is the Pathways to Home program, and that program within the last year has served some 300 plus children and about 130 families. And I dare say that there are many, many other children and families who need services as well. And what I want our community to know is that Orange County, myself included, we're absolutely committed to making a difference in the lives of children within this community and using our tax dollars to do so. So those who want to partner with us in this space, we're willing to certainly partner with you. Orange County has invested funding in the preventative and diversion program at the Coalition for the Homeless. Sadly, we still see a significant number of our youth who are homeless. Our population in Orange County has grown in the last decade alone by 25%. As of March of this year, the census data indicates that we now have over 1.5 million permanent residents within our community. And anytime that a community grows, it grows in a lot of positive ways, but it also grows in some negative ways. And I'll talk more later today about some of the impacts that we're seeing where we suffer from our own success in many ways. But we are the benefactors of federal funding. We have received some $300,000+ for the Orange County community of schools and services, youth and family homeless diversion program. That program is a pilot project that has embraced what is called the upstream model to ensure support for the K through 12 students in need of counseling and extra support. Some youth in Orange County experience high rates of poverty and homelessness and related challenges associated with that. We're here to hopefully reduce the prevalence of that within our community by working in partnership with organizations like Embrace Families.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Pebbles, let me turn to you. Your community, like ours, is really trying to figure out what the right formula is. And one element of that is to really try to find the right moment to intervene with families, hopefully breaking a cycle that for many families could be multi-generational. I know that in Gainesville, your organization has really had a big impact in the development of community resource centers. Can you talk to us a little bit about your vision there and how you believe it's having an impact?
Sure. So, who believes child abuse is preventable? So you have to start there. We believe that child abuse is preventable. And our family resource model has been supporting local at-risk families for more than 14 years now. We opened our first Family Resource Center in 2009 when the shelter, I'm sure a lot of you remember, but the shelter and maltreatment rates in Florida, specifically Miami, Jacksonville, and Gainesville, were unacceptably high. And we knew we had to develop a model focused on prevention, and we worked very closely with our community experts and providers, but also the Department of Children and Families and Casey Family Programs. Have to give a shout out to them. They were instrumental in getting us off the ground and giving us a basis to look at. So then we looked at the data. We scrubbed the data. We looked at it every which way, which you always have to do, right? You want to find out what is the problem, first of all, why is it there, and what can you do about it? And there were a lot of guesses, and for those of you who work the front line, guess where that started? Oh, is it a certain unit? Is it certain workers? Is it certain area? Is it certain supervisors? And it had nothing to do with that. It boiled down to the zip code that you were born in and the zip code you lived in. So we knew then whatever we came up with had to be place-based, and we had to put those centers, or that first center, in the communities who deserved and needed it most. So we then took data from other places in town. So we talked to law enforcement. We talked to the University of Florida, who provided us maternal health data. We got Medicaid data, domestic violence. I mentioned law enforcement with petty crime and mental health data. And when we looked at our maps and our hot spots for those shelters and maltreatment rates, and you put those other maps from everyone else on top of it, I know it seems like duh, of course, but at that moment, it was just like the lights went off. The maps were red, all in the same zip codes for all of these different indicators, which of course are gonna result in poor outcomes for children. So that was it. The idea of a family resource center was born at that point, and we knew it had to be in a specific zip code. So moving to the model, we had to develop a model, and I was lucky enough to be in on the ground floor of that. We ended up using, and we still do, the protective factors model, which if you can teach, give, instill hope around the 5 protective factors, I think most of you are familiar, but concrete supports, social connections, parental resilience, parenting and child development, and the social and emotional competence of children. When those are in place with families, their research shows there's a decreased likelihood of abuse and neglect occurring. That, following that model, along with the 80 or so informal and formal, which everyone so far has mentioned, so I'm just like, ding, 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 yes, we need them. We need commissioners. We need law enforcement. We need families at the table, listening to them authentically. And so those partnerships allow every service offered at our resource centers to be offered free of charge to families. And as prevention, I can go and get a fax done if I want, because I need that for employment. But if you have an open case, you can also come, and we're going to help you and handhold you through things. And as far as service determination and how we figure out what we're going to offer at the centers, it starts with the people coming in. Last year, we served around 28,000 patrons in our 5 resource centers. 3 are in Gainesville, 2 are very rural, I'll mention in a minute. And we're asking everybody who comes in, they fill out satisfaction surveys, we have parent advisory groups, we have community cafes, eliciting what do you want? Not what we think you need, because maybe you're not ready for that, but what do you want? And we're gonna make that happen. The other thing around service determination is you have to hire the right staff, and they have to spend time building rapport and authentically engaging families. And that looks different than what we're sometimes rushed to do day in and day out. And it sounds simple, but if you don't hire the right people, families who live in areas that are not used to being valued or are treated like a number are not really gonna tell you what's weighing on their hearts and what it is that they actually need. So that's the foundation, really, of our customer service model. It is relational and not transactional, and that does take time. Trust building takes time. We also offer concrete supports. Sometimes people don't want to hear this, but the truth is concrete supports are about 50 to 55% of what we offer out of the resource centers. It's been a little higher ever since COVID, and we have not seen that dip down. But those are things when you're in a crisis, or I was thinking, Stephanie, some of the examples you were talking about, that's what you need right then. You may need that food pantry. You may need a nice set of clothes because we've helped you set up a job interview. Whatever it is, we're going to do that. I mentioned faxing. Who knew? When I set up my first resource center, I never thought I would need somebody who could do notary or do faxes. But yes, indeed, those things sometimes cost money. Let's offer them for free. So you come in for concrete support, but often that serves as a gateway to form deeper relationships so we can start kind of unpeeling what else may be going on with you and with your family. And then ultimately, our hope is that you're going to share out what you've learned with others, tell them about the center, and then eventually give back, become a volunteer, join our parent advisory council, things like that. So we offer what the community wants and is ready for, and then we always collect service utilization data, and we trend that, and we look at that, and if we're low on some programming that people are asking for, then my goal of that next quarter is to make sure we're working with one of those partners to make that happen as well.
Thanks, Pebbles. Mayor, I'd like to circle back to you because similar to the creativity that Pebbles is describing up in Gainesville, Orange County has really looked to tackle one of the serious issues that we face right now, which is a significant amount of behavioral and mental health challenges that children face and parents struggle to cope with, frequently even resulting in an involuntary Baker Act for some of our kids. Orange County's Breakthrough Program has made remarkable strides to try to impact this population and sort of provide a pathway to health and development for those families. Can you tell us a little bit about your goals and where you think Breakthrough could go in the future?
I'd be happy to. As I kind of look in this audience out here, I feel like this morning we're somewhat preaching to the choir. If I asked everyone here, how many of you work in this space where you provide services to families and children, raise your hands. Okay. As I thought. So this, I applaud all of you because you're doing the heavy lifting. So my comments at this point, I'm going to try to refrain from using the pronoun I, you know, as we continue the conversation, because I realize that it's a we thing that we are involved in as if we're going to truly make a difference. So as we have the conversation, you know, it comes to mind most recently as it relates to youth who struggle with mental illness. Orlando City Commissioner Regina Hill, one day she gave me a call within the last couple of months, and she was somewhat distraught because she talked about a 9 or a 10-year-old that had committed suicide right here in our community. And so to me, that was a real case, a real situation that accentuated the issues that we wrestle with each day. So when we try to bring programs together, I think of the Breakthrough Program, and we go back to 2013. At that time, the Sandy Hook shooting, school shooting incident happened. And when we think about where we are today, 10 years later, and we're still having school shootings. Every time one of those happens, it traumatizes a community, a family, a school, a child, a teacher. And it begs the question, what do we need to do differently to stop it? Treatment is a big part of that, making sure that people who suffer with mental illness or various behavioral health-related issues, that they get treatment. And unfortunately, there's a deficit of treatment available within our community. So in 2013, Orange County impaneled the mental health, the Youth Mental Health Commission in August of that year, and the objectives were to determine the state of mental health challenges within the system and how it was impacting families. There were 18 members of that group of thought leaders, and the goal was to change the stigma associated with a youth who suffer from mental illness. We probably moved the needle some, but not nearly enough. So the goal was to develop effective strategies and initiatives that would address the gaps in the current system and look for ways to improve the mental health services offered to youth and adults within our community. And so Breakthrough is this robust navigation and care coordination model rooted in the assessment, linking families to evidence-based support, and is augmented by trusting relationships between families and the Breakthrough team of advocates and counselors and clinicians and just people who really care. And so the Breakthrough goals was to improve family functioning and parent-child dynamics to increase caregiver knowledge of and provide access to high-fidelity mental health interventions, to increase caregiver awareness of their strengths, and as well as improve access to wellness tools to help manage children who were exhibiting symptoms and perhaps who were in crisis, with the goal of reducing the number of times that our youth would be Baker acted. And so with the treatment model, we have seen some moderate successes in reducing those numbers, but Breakthrough has received over 250 referrals and served over 150 families through family support navigation services, focusing on that 9 to 17-year-old group, including those who have experienced their first hospitalization. So the work that we have before us continues, Lynn. And so don't get weary. Advocates, stay on the battlefield is my plea to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. As we kind of draw our panel to a close, Stephanie, I'd like to ask a final question for you. You worked so hard to reach your reunification goals, but as you well know, sometimes that doesn't happen. Can you tell us a little bit about what you think kind of makes that difference for families, and maybe how that drew you to start One Heart for Women and Children?
Absolutely. What I love is that people met me where I was. They didn't ask me to be any place that I wasn't. And the same thing with my children. People met them where they were. They felt, and I felt loved. I felt valued. I felt heard. And that's one of the things at One Heart for Women and Children that we do. It is definitely not transactional, as we're helping over 20,000 people each month with food. It's not just a transaction. That was just a statistic. That's all that was. Each person is met with love. Each person is met with us asking them what their needs are. How else can we help? And if we don't have that resource at One Heart for Women and Children, we have partners. We have other people in the community that we will go and we'll make those phone calls with the family or for the family. And so, because again, we want to meet them where they are. When we're asking people to be someplace that they're not, it's impossible. It's just impossible. And when we look around, like looking to the left and looking to the right, where we are right now, every single one of us has a story. Every single one of us has a story, and people have met us exactly where we were when we were in times of sadness or darkness. And when we remember that, and remember the people that helped to meet us where we are, and to help lift us up, and to encourage us and love us, coming exactly from where we were. But that hope, never giving up hope, you know, and keeping ourselves filled up as well. If we deplete ourselves, then we can't be any good to anybody else. So with my story, I think that it was people met me where I was. They didn't ask me to be anything different than what I was, but I also had determination. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I didn't want to fall down that same hole again, and I had the perfect team that just rallied around me and said that you don't have to live this way anymore. And because of that, it was one more step, one more step, one more step. And each time I started feeling like, oh my gosh, it's overpowering. I can't do it all. There was always somebody there to help catch me and to say, absolutely you can. Absolutely you can.
Stephanie, what advice would you give to other families who are experiencing what you've experienced?
To anybody that's walking through losing their children, is that what the question is? Not to give up. You know, it's really easy to feel defeated. Surround yourself with other, they said to me, winners. And I was like, what does that look like? Because there's really no losers. And they said there are other people that are doing They're doing the next right thing. They are going to 12-step groups and parenting groups and other support groups. So that was one of the biggest things for me, is knowing that I wasn't alone. You know, I knew there were other people around that had their children removed. I had never seen anybody that had their children given back. And for LaShawn Henderson, she had said, you know, this is in 8 years, you're the first mother that I've been able to give full reunification back to the parents. And like, that just shouldn't be. It doesn't have to be. But it's also, the parent has to be sick and tired of being sick and tired of living the lifestyle or however they're living. I also want to say that they're trusting in the system. Like, I mean, it's hard for some people. For me, I had to get out of the way. I'm really, really blessed that my children went to an amazing foster home. Absolutely amazing. 24 years later, we're still in touch with them. Not everybody has that same story. But I had to trust that they had me so that I could get clean and sober and do what I needed to do to be the woman that I am today. So just not giving up.
Of this conversation, because as you mentioned, Mayor, we are all aligned here, but that alignment needs to extend beyond this room. And then partly also, how do we add any discussion about making sure that those goals of permanency and reunification are equally applied racially?
Yeah, actually, I would not mind at all an opportunity to respond to your question. So One Hope is a wonderful partner for us at Embrace Families, but I think part of the dynamic that Charles is highlighting is that, you know, if you kind of look at those systems that rest at the end of the line, it gets real lonely as a system. And you realize how complicated the issues are. You also realize the holes in the safety nets that happen prior to a family coming to you. And I think similar to the way Stephanie kind of described that checklist, how complicated it is to get out. And the reality is that we need those other systems if we're ever going to make it. I've had so many conversations with sister social serving systems that says, we're not a provision system. We're out getting those services from others to help our kids and to help their families. And you realize that there's fundamental building blocks in the way our social safety net is designed that blocks a lot of that interaction. And so I think at the spirit of Charles' question is, how do we start to remove some of those roadblocks so that these things are much more seamless to flow in and out of healthcare, to flow in and out of education, or flow in and out of support services, which is ultimately what families need if they're ever going to climb over those barriers that Stephanie's describing. And I think a lot of the traditional disparities, including race, stay because the building blocks don't change. And so until we realize that we have to change that construction, we're probably never going to get the impact that I think we want.
You know, in the school system, we see every aspect of these issues, whether we're looking at hunger disparity, health disparity, families who have lost their way, and children who feel abandoned and have a lot of suicidal ideation. I love what you were saying there. We are preaching to the choir here, a very strong choir who can take the message out. But how can we utilize maybe some of the systems that we have in place? Even our gathering spaces like the Magic Games and the soccer games, to get little inklings of consistent messages out, and using the primary care access network, because one thing that does happen for the most part is people will seek health care when they're in crisis. And because of that great network, and they're already great referral partners, but is there a way that we can blend it through a system, especially now that the hospitals are all on the same medical record system? There's components of that for social services. So maybe there's some things that we can look at there collectively and try to get that interactive system similar to what we did with housing years back with the HUD system and review. Sorry, there is question.
There are a number of things to kind of respond to the question and the comment. Here in Orange County, we're pretty fortunate to have these community partnerships and collaborations. They're underway. We have the Orange County Citizens Commission for Children, which is a standing entity that is interdisciplinary, where we bring all components that work in this space together, and they make recommendations about how we can better coordinate, and also when Orange County allocates the various taxpayer dollars to these different initiatives, they give us recommendations and priorities. So that is happening now at this point. But through every time we have a meeting like this, it's an opportunity for us to resharpen our saw, those of us who work in this space, and then to go out and be armed with, I think, new information and bring others into the collaborative that we have. We also, in addition to the Citizens Commission for Children, we did something here within Orange County. We commissioned a study to take a look at the delivery of services, and particularly those that impact youth. And what we found was that Orange County has 53 zip codes in the 1,000 square miles, and we found that out of 9 of those zip codes, there are youth who are disproportionately being impacted by crime, lack of adequate housing, access to health care. That translates into high teenage pregnancy rates, high rates of incarceration, high truancy, high dropout rates, et cetera. And up to that point, up until about 2018, Orange County was allocating about $67 million on an annual basis into different youth-related programs. But what we decided, the Board of County Commission, that we would allocate an additional $20 million on an annual basis that would go to community-based organizations to allow those, in some cases they're faith-based, others they're nonprofits, who will work with our youth on the prevention and intervention angle early on, where those youth live right in their neighborhoods. So collectively, it's about $87 million that we're tracking at this point. So in order to address some of these issues, it requires some dollars, it requires some funding, not enough. We even commissioned through the Heart of Florida United Way a study, a gap analysis study, to look at where we are deficient with the delivery of mental health services in our community to the youth as well as adults. And we found that from that study that was delivered to the county in January of last year, we had a $49 million gap in those available services. What Orange County did was we said that from our general revenues, we allocated in the current fiscal year an additional $10 million to address the $49 million gap in those mental health services. And those funds are on the street. They are being administered now. The goal is to hopefully move the needle somewhat. We are still working with our hospitals, philanthropic community, to take a look at the total system of care and the data. Really, because of HIPAA laws and some other things, we have not done a very good job of sharing the information across our various technology systems. And so we're looking to how we can integrate that, where there's some coordination between the courts and providers, et cetera, to share the data. And every county in Florida is required to have something called a Criminal Justice Public Safety Coordinating Council, an interdisciplinary group, and they meet on a quarterly basis and talk about how we can improve the system. Because your question had to do with how do we bring the judges and everyone in together in law enforcement. Well, here in the state of Florida, it is mandated that law enforcement officers now have to have training in this space, and our community is in the midst of I'm going to say a couple of pilot projects where with the Orlando Police Department, they have licensed clinicians who are responding to calls into the community when persons are in crises, hopefully to reduce the negative interactions between law enforcement and a citizen who is in crisis that really needs services. The Orange County Sheriff's Office has a pilot program where they are dispatching licensed clinicians along with a deputy sheriff. So Orlando sends the licensed person out independently where they can, and they're collecting data now on ensuring that those individuals have the appropriate referrals and they get access to the services that are available within our community. So we're collecting the data on that to see how it works. Orange County is funding the program through the Sheriff's Office, and the City of Orlando is funding the program with the Orlando Police Department. So those are some emerging things that are happening that we'll learn from, and perhaps they will serve as a model for the rest of the nation. All right, so thank you.
We've got a very activist group here. We have a couple other questions, but we'll go quickly.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm hearing words root cause, prevention, and maybe first I should say I'm here as a foster mom, also as a mother of a 16-year-old who just had a mental crisis on Sunday, so just a few days ago. And so Miss Pam is here from Orange County Public Schools, and hearing Miss Stephanie's story, I'm thinking about the teenage kids, right? High schoolers, who are going to be in 5 to 10 years, potentially in some of these situations. And 10 years might seem like a lifetime to some of us, and those of us over 50 knows it's just right around the corner. So I would propose for consideration, as you guys do the mental health days 4 or 5 times a year, maybe started in elementary, once a year, an hour, a video, how not to abuse a child, how to be a parent, where nobody's teaching our kids. They can only go on what they see at home, right? The modeling, and if there's crisis at home, it's gonna repeat itself potentially. So maybe put a program like that together to plant the seed early on, and by the time they are in 10th, 11th grade, they have seen 10 hours of it, of how to do it, and what kind of resources there might be if you find yourself in that situation or something like that.
And Stephanie's amazing daughter has a question.
Mom, first and foremost, I want to say thank you for all of your selflessness and your dedication and your sacrifice to get my sister and I into a safe place. And to everybody in the room who constantly pours into kids and families, making it a safer place for us to grow up in and be a parent and be able to love on our families. Thank you guys for all of your selfless work that you do. Mayor Demings, this question is actually for you. You brought up a great point on the ramifications of school shootings, and in light of the most recent school shooting in Nashville, I want to ask you what you and other elected officials in the Orange County are doing to prevent a tragedy like that happening in our Orange County school systems. Not only did you bring up a great point about individuals, the community, the school, but I would love to know more about preventing that from happening, like somewhere inside of our Orange County school systems.
Once again, I think many of the persons who are involved in these school shootings, the shooters, probably suffer from some form of mental illness. And if we want to stop the school shootings, then we have to influence the decision makers. And if they're mentally ill, make certain that they have access to treatment. Make certain that they are identified early and they're referred to treatment. The other thing is that In my humble opinion, we have made it far too easy in our nation to get access to assault weapons. We are going to have to take, at some point, we will depoliticize the conversation and get to the point where we have some common sense laws to reduce the prevalence of guns falling in the hands of the wrong people. And we are working with our school districts. Fortunately, here in Orange County, every public school has a law enforcement officer that is assigned to that school. In my career, I've had the opportunity to respond to school shootings, and through training, law enforcement officers are able to quickly respond and to reduce the lethality of the situation. However, we want to prevent it from happening in the first place. And so we are funding and putting law enforcement officers on school campuses. The school district is working to harden the school campuses and all of those things. But those things usually are effective once the crisis has started. So I would believe that we have to make certain that our children are exposed to people who will train, help parent them through our youth programs and all of those prevention programs that we fund, so that they have the right developmental years or the right access to programs within our community. And we spend a lot of time in Orange County. We typically use a four-pronged approach to reducing violence. Again, we bring awareness, prevention, spend a lot of dollars in those areas. Secondly, intervention. We have youth who sometimes get involved in gang activity and other illicit behavior, and it's better to intervene early. And then some, unfortunately, they are involved in unlawful behavior, delinquency, etc. There has to be some enforcement. They have to be held accountable. Those who choose to go down that path. And then there's prosecution. We have to be willing. Sometimes incarceration is an opportunity to hold someone accountable and also to rehabilitate them as well. So that four-prong approach of prevention, intervention, enforcement, and prosecution is a strategy that has worked well for us over time. We have been able to reduce crime, reduce violent crime. For now decades, Orange County has led with treatment programs. We're one of the few counties that has a central receiving center where individuals who, because of their substance abuse, alcoholism, mental health issues, behavioral health issues, we're able to put them into treatment and reduce recidivism, repeat offenses, and it has worked to the point where we have been able to reduce. In the last 20 years, our jail population is about half of what it used to be.
Oh, thank you all again for being here. Big thanks to our panelists. Real testament to their experience, comments, and commitments, to see the energy in the room. And a lot of times in these events, you see people trickling out. There's no trickling out. Thank you all so much. It's a wonderful reflection of who we are as a community and who we are individually. Thanks for being here. Go paint your nails.